church and culture. That's what we talk about here at Church Public. The difference between church, following Jesus, and culture, what this world is doing. And more, what I am seeing is states distancing from each other morally. I know that we live in a federal system. I know that each state has the right to operate in slightly different ways, but more and more, what I'm seeing is the states are growing apart. And you see this most clearly in this sexual and gender indoctrination of children. California, Colorado, Washington, New York, New Jersey, and a bunch of others all have some kind of sex ed program where elementary children are told about gender and all the LGBT issues that come with it. And then you have Florida and some others, but mostly Florida, pushing back and causing quite a stir, enough to get the lovely hosts of the Oscars chanting against this Florida bill.
Well, we're going to have a great night tonight, and for you people in Florida, we're going to have a gay night.
Welcome to Church Public. I'm Matt Odegaard. Well, Florida's Anti-Grooming Bill, which is really a better term, though the left has deemed it the Don't Say Gay Bill, which, once again, doesn't say gay in it. We will read more of the text for you if you haven't heard it from me or anyone else so far. It doesn't say gay in it, but I think Anti-Grooming Bill really is the best description of this bill. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some of the other places where just weirdness is going on. And I've talked about a little bit of this in the past, but there is now a war in between Florida, and specifically the governor of Florida and the legislation in Florida, and Disney. Disney has stepped up its attack. At first, it looked like Disney was just going to say, we just want to make movies, guys. We just want to have theme parks and make movies, and you legislate whatever you want to legislate. And of course, the woke and LGBTQAIP plus #$ people in the corporation said, no, we're going to fight this, and we're going to fight this tooth and nail. So you have Disney, who responded to this Don't Say Gay bill, and we're going to read you that response in a moment. But it does stand to note that the measure, this bill, has passed in Florida. The governor signed it. So the governor signed this bill. The measure is actually known as the Parental Rights and Education Bill. And then again, on the left, it's titled, or not titled, it has been coined the Don't Say Gay Bill. Again, doesn't have that language in it. We'll look at that in a second. But this is the Parental Rights and Education Bill. It's a bill about classroom instruction and banning age-inappropriate teachings of sexual orientation and gender identity for children in kindergarten through third grade, and then it ratchets up from there. And DeSantis said, here's a great quote from him, and we'll look at another thing that he said in a minute, but he said, quote, "If the people who held up degenerates like Harvey Weinstein as exemplars and heroes and all that, if these are the types of people that are opposing us on parents' rights, I wear that like a badge of honor." DeSantis, I mean, what a guy. All right. So there's a couple things going on. Again, this is an older response because this is when just it had been passed in legislation, but it is interesting, and we do have to read that Biden also personally responded. And this is where we get into the difference or some of the overlap maybe in between the states and the federal system, the country, the government, the administration of the President of the United States, because the President of the United States weighed in on this Florida bill. So again, can states do whatever they want? Apparently no, in this new moral universe where sexual identity and gender identity and all this other LGBTQAIP plus stuff is the only value worth fighting for. So just to flash back, this was Biden's response a little bit ago. This was dated, let me see if I can find the date. This is February 8th. So this is a little bit old, but it is in response to the first note of this bill coming out. The White House actually said, today, conservative politicians in Florida advanced legislation designed to attack, that's their language, LGBTQI plus kids instead of making growing up harder for young people at POTUS is focused on keeping schools open and supporting students' mental health, end quote, of the White House. And then President Biden added on to that specifically and personally, he says, I want every member of the LGBTQI plus community, especially the kids who will be impacted by this hateful bill, to know you are loved, accepted just as you are. I have your back, and my administration will continue to fight for the protections and safety you deserve. So again, we've got attacking, we've got hateful. This bill is hateful, right? That's what we're hearing. That's what the news has been reporting. I saw one statistic that like a third plus of people didn't even know gay wasn't in this bill at all. And that's why I just have to talk about it again. And I'm tired of talking about this bill, but it's important to talk about this from a Christian worldview perspective, because this is an assault on kids and it's an assault on family. Because what we're talking about here is, does your morality come from the school, the teachers, the administrators, or does your morality come from your family, the people that birthed you and raised you, like mothers and fathers and maybe even extended family in that? This is the crux, right? Does your morality come from, and do you get it from, and can you, or is it mandatory that you get your morality from school, or do you get your morality from parents? And this is the fight, right? This is the fight that's going on. And again, reading the bill, like I'll read some of the bill for you. This is a quote directly from the bill. If you're not watching, I have it on the screen. I'll read it for you. Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate. These people, including the President of the United States, say this statement is an attack and it is hateful. Did you hear hateful words in there? What I heard is, hey, I don't want you, teacher, administrator in a school, to tell my kids about weird sexual and gender ideologies. And if you say, well, this isn't happening, right? This isn't happening in schools. I just want to read from you. I just reading this article on New Jersey that just popped up this morning. This is in New Jersey. A woman who decided to transition, whose name is Aiden Dowling. I don't know how to pronounce this. Aydian. These new names, like I don't know what to do with. Anyway, so this is a woman who decided to transition, take testosterone, and is now identifying as a male. Okay, I'm just trying to set up what's happening in this particular school. This occurred in Pearl Miller Middle School in New Jersey. This person, Aiden, I'll just say Aiden. I don't know how to pronounce it. No, I'll say this, Dowling. Last name is Dowling. Okay. Dowling was invited to do an assembly and show a video at this school. This individual has a video about the transition, which was shared on video and by talk. Parents were, get this, not aware this was going to take place ahead of time, according to Garden State families. They were not aware. This is the thing we're talking about, right? This is the thing we're talking about. It's happening. Okay, this is New Jersey, not Florida. Okay, but that's why I'm separating out these states. Apparently different states are handling this differently, and that's the thing that we really have to take notice of. But the president of the United States is saying all the states have to do this. So that's where, like, again, this is coming to a head, and it's coming to a head in your house and in your school. It doesn't matter where you are. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about the Austin case where there was a mandatory Pride Week for the elementary students where they were, do I say forced? I don't know what else to say. It was mandatory for them to make and craft and create their own pride flags and paraphernalia and march through the halls saying pride, 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 pride. I played that video for you before. I'm not going to play it again. You get the idea. That is in Texas. So again, it doesn't matter what state you're in. It doesn't matter where you are. This is more prevalent in states like California, Washington, New York, New Jersey, etc. But it's everywhere. And so that's why this is important to talk about. This is important to talk about, and that there is this kind of, what do you call it? Indoctrination into LGBTQAIP plus everywhere. And it's going to happen more and more because this is what the culture wants. And I played you that clip from the Oscars, which was just really cringy as far as I'm concerned, which got a standing ovation, right? And of course you could say, well, the bravery of 3 female hosts chanting gay in a room full of gay people is not particularly brave, but standing ovation to this. And that's the thing, right? This is the indoctrination that is going forward, and it's going on and on and on. I told you the stat the other day, again, that at least 20%, 1 in 5 students under 20 are identifying now as LGBTQ. 1 in 5. That number is up from around 0.01 or 0.02% for your grandfather, right? For your grandfather's generation. That's a lot of change in a little bit of time, in only a few decades. And what's the reason? Has the world really evolved that much, if you believe in that? Or is it that schools have begun teaching this, and so kids are brought up in this, and sex education is mandatory in many of these areas, and the administration wants sex education mandatory in all of the schools across America, and this is the sex education that they want mandatory. Then I've showed you the gender unicorn. If you want to be terrified, look up that if you don't know what that is. There's the genderbread man. I'm not going to post these right now, but you can go and look them up. There's the gender unicorn, the genderbread man, who they're showing to children from K through 5 on how to change, identify, create this new sexual and gender expression. This is happening across schools across the country. So again, back to this New Jersey, just a little bit more. This person who is biologically and by birth female, who is now identifying as male, who is a self-described activist and public speaker who works as a life coach. That's great. And has appeared on the cover of Men's Health. I just have to pause right there and say, what? Okay, continue on. As well as being a guest multiple times on Ellen's show, and is the CEO of Point of Pride nonprofit that's helped over 10,000 people. 10,000 people. Again, this is not a small thing. That's why I keep bringing this up. Not a small thing. 10,000 people receive gender-affirming garments and up into surgeries. The article on this from, again, the Garden State Families says that the video has the feel of a self-help video showing, this is a quote from them, that it was only through medical gender transition that the subject became comfortable physically with this person's experience. Gender transition, such as that which Dowling described euphorically in the video, means a process during which the person begins to live according to their gender identity rather than the gender they were thought to be at birth. Gender transitions look different for every person. Possible steps include changing one's clothing, appearance, name, and in some cases, changing identification documents or undergoing medical treatments. There it is. So we're talking to children in an elementary, or in this case, in a middle school, just a little bit past elementary, saying that you should go through this gender transition, change your clothes, and up into maybe even doing medical treatment. This goes on to say, just one final sentence, the steps each person takes depend on their individual needs and access to resources. So that's why we get to Florida, because this is just one example. I was reading an example earlier today of Washington State. Again, there are a lot of examples in California. Oregon has examples. New York has examples. Indiana, I've seen examples. This is all over the place. And so it's important to think about this. And Disney, as I mentioned, is responding to this bill, as well as the lovely hosts of the Oscars singing their song. So Disney is responding to this, and Disney, the largest employer in Florida, well, they said this. This is a statement posted from the Walt Disney Company on the signing of the Florida legislation. Florida's HB 1557, also known as the Don't Say Gay Bill. Now, I have to stop again in the description and say here, I just read for you the words in the bill. It is not also known as the Don't Say Gay Bill. It has been dubbed the Don't Say Gay Bill by opponents to the bill. It doesn't say the word in it. That's not what it's about. Anyway, all right, continuing on in this quote. This bill should never have passed and should never have been signed into law. Our goal as a company, this is Disney talking, our goal as a company is for this law to be repealed by the legislature or struck down in the courts, and we remain committed to supporting the national and state organizations working to achieve that. We are dedicated to standing up for the rights and safety of LGBTQ plus members of the Disney family, as well as the LGBTQ plus community in Florida and across the country. So you see what's going on here. What we have is the Disney Corporation is is declaring war against the government of Florida. How else do we read that? I don't know. That's how I see it. It seems like the Disney Corporation is saying, we are going to fight this legislation. It should never have been passed. It's hateful. You hear all those words in there. So these are the things that we need to pay attention to. Why? Because this is culture setting. And this does go back to that question, because what they're arguing for is the ability of teachers and administrators to indoctrinate children as young as kindergarten, 5 years old, or pre-K, right? They're saying 5-year-olds need to be taught through the genderbread man, the gender unicorn. Again, go and look these up. They're beautiful, cute little animations that show you all about gender ideology and sexual ideology and all of this LGBTQ activism. So these children have to be told about this. They have to be, for their safety, for their health. This is the argument that you're hearing from the radical left and now the mainstream Disney Corporation that is saying this, right? So this is literally a war of corporation versus the state of Florida, right? I don't know how else to take that. So you have DeSantis himself who responds to this. I think I have a clip here. Let's see if we have this.
For Disney to come out and put a statement and say that the bill should have never passed and that they are going to actively work to repeal it, I think, one, was fundamentally dishonest, but two, I think that crossed the line. This state is governed by the interests of the people of the state of Florida. It is not based on the demands of California corporate executives. They do not run this state. They do not control this state.
Right. I mean, I think DeSantis has this exactly correct. I think he is true that this is what Disney is saying. Disney is saying that they are going to stand up against the state and the government of Florida, and that they know better, one, than the government. And he has a really good point here. Is the government run by the people, as the founders intended and as each state is laid out, as well as the federal government? Is the government run by the people, where we elect people and those people represent us in the state? Or is the government run by corporations who are influenced by the loudest and largest and people with the most funding? Like, is this a corporation run country? Should it be a corporation country? Do you see the difference here? If we were to become a corporation run country, where the corporation with the most money, the corporation with the most power, the corporation with the wildest, loudest people is the corporation or conglomerate that runs our country, does that sound like a good thing? How do you then push back against this corporation? Just think about the end result of this. Where does that go? Can you push back against a corporation like this? I don't see a way that you can. There is no way. If the corporation has all the money and all the power and they're now setting legislation, is this a good form of government? Can you see this working out well for the people? I certainly can't. So I think DeSantis has this exactly right, that this is crossing a line. This is a corporation declaring a war against a state and saying, we, the corporation, know better than you, and we're going to fight this morally through this gender ideology push of how we are to train our kids. So DeSantis was asked about boycotts, and he was asked, well, again, Disney is a giant company, right? It's a giant corporation. So what if they start boycotting things? Here is some of the response that he had. DeSantis said, quote, and I'm putting this quote on the screen. Again, if you're just listening, I'll read it for you. He said, last year saw the highest level of domestic tourism in the history of our state. Again, that's Florida. In both quarter 3 and 4 of 2021, tourism in Florida exceeded the same quarter of 2019, pre-pandemic. So Florida is one of the few places in the world where more people are visiting now than before the pandemic. He went on to say, many of the tourists in Florida have visited us from other states with mandates and restrictions, which we've seen and identified and shown over the course of this pandemic, where governors and politicians would shut their states down and then go vacation maskless in Florida. I didn't even clip any of that because you've probably seen it. It's hilarious and so hypocritical, and they often get called out in it. But anyway, that's the point he's looking to here. saying that many people have visited from other states with mandates and restrictions all continue on to enjoy freedoms and sense of normalcy that Florida has become renowned for under Governor DeSantis' leadership. Business is thriving here as well because the governor has kept our state open and our tax burden remains the lowest in the country. This is a statement from the Florida state government. There are things that everyone can appreciate, regardless of their gender or sexual orientation. Therefore, we are not concerned about boycotts or any other economic harm to Florida as a result of any legislation. And this is my favorite part of it. But even if we were, like, I love this. This is I don't know how else to read this. This is fighting words. Disney said, we're going to fight with you. And the government of Florida said, even if you boycott us, even if we were, and they put this in the printed statement. This is in bold. So if you're not seeing this again, this is in bold type. No amount of money would convince Governor DeSantis to change his position. He will always stand for parental rights and protecting children. This is it, people. This is what we need. We need more of this. And I know people have been hesitant, and I've had many conversations myself. You can't legislate my morality. I have a whole episode on that. Go and listen to it at churchpublic.com. Or any of the podcast places. You can search for that one. Actually, I think I've done a couple on it at this point, but you have people saying, no, why are your ideas better than my ideas? They're not. Everybody's ideas are the same and everybody can do whatever they want. No, that's just wrong. It's never been true in the history of humanity, and it's not true now. There will always be ideas that are better than others, and sometimes in bad governance, the people with the strongest ideas go forward. For some reason, God created a miracle in America where good ideas were at the forefront from the beginning of the founding of America. That's not to obliterate that there were bad things. Yes, there are bad things. There are bad things in every society, but there were good ideas at the foundation of America in freedom and life and love and liberty and those types of things, right? We've talked all about those in the past. I'm not going to get into a history lesson right now. And those ideas are better. And the ideas are better because they promote freedom. You cannot have freedom if you do not have a foundation on which to put the freedom. Now, as a believer in Jesus, I believe 100% that the foundation is on God. Without this foundation of God, you cannot have any foundation of freedom or liberty or the pursuit of happiness, as the Declaration would say it. You just can't. But from a conservative perspective, what he's saying here and what the state of Florida is saying here is exactly correct, that you cannot compromise on parental rights. The state does not own your children. That gets into weird socialism, communism, Marxism issues that you just don't want. And they don't end up where all of these ideologues think they end up. They just don't. Go back and look at history. We've gone over this over and over and over again. When you believe that the state owns your children, things go really poorly for a society. And we don't want that. Of course we don't want that. But apparently some people want that and want to shout it from the hilltops. This is the fight that we actually are in. So in order to use the government, which God gives us, he gives us the government and he allows us to use the government to the ends of the kingdom of God, not to our own ends, not to the ends of culture, but to the ends of the kingdom of God. When we're able to harness the power of government and use it for the good of society, that's good. When people use the government to cramp down on freedoms and all of the other weird and wacky things that we've seen over the past couple of years and talked about over the past couple of years, these are not good things. So legislation can be used. It is a tool that can be used for good. And this is a great example of legislation being used for good, where the governor and the government of Florida is saying, don't mess with our kids in terms of sexual and gender ideology. That's just not right. That is the parent's responsibility, of which I agree 100%. And I agree based on the foundation of the Bible, where children are given to the parents to raise as they should in the way of the Lord, which should be very, very clear, but apparently is an ultimate mystery to some of these kinds of people. So this is a great step by the governor of Florida. And of course, the rest of America hates him for it, which is really funny. I also think it is worth mentioning that there was a recent poll that I think the Daily Wire did, but it's a good poll, whether or not you believe in conservative polls. Most polls are liberal or leftist, but this is a poll across racial party age lines. And And Americans, by and large, more than 60% support this Florida proposal. The poll results indicate something like 64% support this Florida ban on the teaching of sexual orientation and gender in K through 3. Again, we're talking about K through 3, kindergarten through third grade. And only 20% or 21% oppose the bill that is stated. I think this is important, and I think it's important where you hear like Disney, the largest corporation in Florida and a huge corporation in America and the world, is against this. They are in the minority functionally, statistically. Like, that's an important point to note, that they're in the minority, even though they're the loudest one that you hear right now. And Hollywood is the loudest one that you hear right now. And Joe Biden himself is the loudest one that you hear right now. You need to listen past the noise of things that are happening and listen to what people are actually saying. And more than 60%, 2/3 of people are saying, yeah, please don't indoctrinate my children in all of this stuff. And that's what we have to hold on to. So the reason we need to point this out in terms of a cultural event, a current cultural event, and a Christian perspective or Christian worldview is that this is not going to stop anytime soon. It is accelerating. The next thing that we're going to see, which I've brought forward already, but we're going to see it more and more, is the ultimate end of this is pedophilia. And it really is, and I hate to say that, but that's why this type of legislation is super important, because this group of people who is arguing for this now is already starting to crack it open as far as arguing for, like, they've changed the euphemism to minor attracted person, which is super gross. But this is the direction culture is going, and it's the direction culture has gone in these events over and over and over again. Look at Greece, look at Rome, etc. We could go on and on, but I don't want to, and I don't need to today. The point that we need to note is you and your family, if you are a parent, if you are a mother, if you are a father, if you're a grandmother, a grandfather, you need, and I don't use this lightly, you need to be involved in your child's education. You need to be checking in, especially if your children are in any public school in America. What are they teaching? What are they actually teaching specifically about this kind of thing? Because chances are this has infiltrated, because this is the kind of thing that they want to infiltrate, and they've been sneaking it in, and this weird Zoom year that we had actually cracked the curtain as far as what is really going on, and these stories are starting to come out, and it's good that they're coming out so that we know about them. It's horrific that they're coming out because we hope it's not true, but unfortunately, in a lot of places, this is true. So do keep checking in on your children. Have weird and awkward conversations with them. And I mean that truthfully. You need to have conversations with your children about this. You can't just expect they're going to learn it from school. Please don't do that. Please don't expect they're going to learn it from social media, which they will if you don't say anything. And that's maybe even worse than learning it from school. I'm just telling you, some of the TikTok stuff that's going on right now, I can't even describe it on this channel. So teach your children about this in an appropriate way. Talk to them about it. I get it. It's awkward. It's weird. But for their sake, please have these conversations in an appropriate and mature, age-appropriate manner. Don't let the schools do this. Pull your kids out of school during these days if you can't pull them out for its entirety. There just is too much of this going on in and among the other critical race theory and gender theory things that are going on. This is very closely connected to critical race theory. This gender theory, critical race theory, it is all connected. I've gone about that before. I won't talk about it completely today, but I'll keep coming back to it as we go through time. It's just important for you to be aware. That's the thing I want you to have, is eyes open as you go into these things. It doesn't matter where you live. I know you're sitting there. If you've made it this far, maybe you're not, but I know some people have said, well, this isn't happening in my school. It's not happening in my neighborhood. I'm telling you, I live in one of the most conservative places in one of the conservative states in America, and they just found this in the school like that I can see across the street. I'm just telling you, it is legitimately everywhere. So start paying attention and seeing what is going on, because your kids are worth it. And I want you to be the best parent you can be, and I want you to parent in the way that God has placed you. This responsibility and this great opportunity that you have to be the parent that God has empowered you to be. I know it feels overwhelming. Believe me, I have 4 of my own. It's an overwhelming thing, but you can do it because God has placed you in this. He does not make mistakes. I believe that 100%, and you should too. God does not make mistakes, and and he gave you kids so that you would grow, so that they would grow as well. And you have a great opportunity in that. I hope you do it. I hope you parent well. I hope that you continue to love God with your mind and soul and heart and strength with all that you have. And of course, I hope that you continue to keep the faith. This is Church Public, and I'm Matt Odegaard.